Hi, and a very good morning to all. Firstly, we would like to thank you for joining our first webinar in 2021, and we hope you enjoy our webinar series in 2020. And the first theme of the webinar is digital banking. Here we got Azlin from Innovative, our business development manager. We have Shankai from Innovative as well, our product specialist. And today we have a very special guest, which is Mr. EK, Chief of Digital Officer in INFOPRO. So the topic for today is unlocking digital banking revolution in Malaysia and eKYC in digital banking and the technical aspects of eKYC solution. Without further ado, I will pass the floor to Mr. EK.
Okay, thank you, Alvi. Okay, let me share my screen. So just a minute. Okay. Okay. Basically, today's I'm going to share a little bit on the digital banking revolutions. Thank you, Innovative, for giving us the opportunities to share our views here. So before I go into the topics, maybe do allows me to spend a few minutes to introduce our company. Okay, basically, INFOPRO has been in the market for 34 years. Okay, we have been implemented in 100 over sites across 32 countries, and we are very proud with 100% successful implementations. Okay, and over the years, we have been actually working on the core banking in the areas of deposits, loans, accounting systems, and treasury and trade financing. And in the last 10 years, we realized that there's a need for a digital and the rising of digital needs or from the digital disruptions where we invested heavily into the digital customer experience to build up the mobile and internet banking experience to the customers. And today, with the use of the cloud technologies, we are venturing into cloud banking, as well as we are just embarking on the AI-driven banking 2 years ago, where we see a tremendous opportunity in the futures where bank will be actually driven by the efficiencies introduced by the AI. With the use of machine learning, natural language processing, you'll be able to automate a lot of processes to make your entire operation more leaner and lower down the operational costs to the banks. Okay, and what we have created is a AI-driven digital banking platforms. Okay, this is a platforms which enables all the these technologies to power up our entire banking solutions, which you can actually split it into by different products. We have different core banking products, digital banking products, risk and compliance products, as well as analytics products. Okay, and we have some ready-made solutions with banking models, which can be easily fit into the respective requirements, such as retail banking, corporate banking, Islamic banking, challenger bank, which is uniquely designed for a digital bank who operates without a physical brick and mortar branch, and also a investment bank models. Okay, and our award-winning AI-driven digital banking platforms has been actually well recognized globally. Recently, we have been actually named as the best core banking solution providers by FinTech Futures in December last year. And the year before that, we have been actually recognized by Islamic Finance News as the best Islamic financial software providers. Okay, as the name applies, our solution comes with 2 different engines, which supports conventional as well as Islamic banking, which can be actually configured to suit the requirements, the Sharia requirement in different countries. Okay. So that's about the companies. Okay, let's move on to today's topic. Okay, let's actually look into the emergence of these new digital banks. Now, you probably could be very familiar with the names like Revolut, Starling Banks, Monzo, New Bank, and N26, and things like that, which has been operated exceptionally successful in the Western world. Okay, but what happened is we do not see much progress in these regions, okay, especially in Southeast Asia. But things has changed, okay. That's why we started to see some new digital banks has been actually deployed to the market in the areas like Hong Kong. We have a NIT Bank, and then the Timo in the Vietnam, and the Kakao Bank in the South Korea, and also a new brands from UOB, a Tomorrow Banks, which has been deployed recently to Thailand and Indonesia markets. Okay, I come to that slightly in the next slide. Okay, so this actually mark the beginnings of the digital banking chapter in Southeast Asia, I believe. Okay, so if you look at the trends, the central banks in the different countries has started to actually recognize the needs of actually digital banks and to have a proper framework for the incubations and to encourage the banks to actually be innovative and service the customers better. Okay, that's where we see Hong Kong as the first one who set up the new digital bank frameworks, which has been launched with all the 8 banks has been gone live last year in 2020. That follows by Singapore. MAS has issued 4 licenses late 2020 also. And Malaysia is still in the drafting, okay, which we have actually announced that we'll be accepting the applications soon. And then they will be going to issue another 5 more licenses by Bank Negara. And something very uniquely, slightly different in the Philippines is that if you see from the first 3 examples that I quoted, basically they are very little based on the unbanked populations. The financial inclusion is relatively high on this so-called a little bit of mature markets. Okay, so when it comes to Philippines, it is a market that have a very high populations. A study in 2019 where 71.4% of the adults, which is equivalent to 51.2 million of the populations, is basically still not having a banking account. Now, this number is even bigger than the population in Malaysia. So this is how big is the opportunity for the financial inclusions in Philippine market. Okay, so that actually creates a different strategies or different demands if you compare to the banks in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia as compared to Philippines. Okay, I deal into that slide a little bit more later. Now let's look at the Hong Kong. Okay, so as you can see that these are all the 8 banks that have went live recently. Okay, you can see some influence. Okay, that's a strong influence from a China big tech, which is actually leading by Alibaba and Tencent, where Alibaba is actually, of course, directly owning the Ant Financial, which you have the Ant Bank here, and Tencent is actually investing into this Fusion Bank. Okay, beyond this, you also see that the other China firms is also leveraging on the new bank license in Hong Kong to actually diversify their business into banking. That, for example, which is Chong An Assurance and Ping An Assurance in the Jia Bank and the Power Bank respectively. And at the bottom, we also can see another phenomenon is where there are some banks which are backed by existing banks. Okay, for example, MOX is backed by Standard Chartered. So for I think the aims is for these banks to try out a new digital brands and to try out probably stress test their new technology platforms. Okay, and Levy Banks is on the other hand is backed by Bank of China. Okay, and uniquely, WeBank is someone who actually does not form a strong consortium partnerships, but actually it lives by its own. It was started as a homegrown Hong Kong fintech company providing a lending service, and eventually evolved into acquiring the banking license. Okay, which is very encourageable in these regions. Okay, now with this kind of observation, we also see the similar impact to other countries such as Singapore. So Singapore's, I think there are a lot of applications actually submitted to MAS for the applications of the new license, and it was shortlisted down to 14 and finally issued with 4 licenses, as you see on the screens. And from here, we also can see the influence from Ant Financials and also from Tencent, okay, where Tencent actually provide a backup to C Group, which owns the Shopee's e-commerce platforms. Looking at the full license banking, Grabs and Shopee or C Group is actually, both of them also exhibit the very similar capabilities whereby they actually will be able to provide, they came from an established platforms or super app platform which actually have a tremendous customer base to supply to the banking needs, okay. And looking at the Philippines, okay, Philippines, as example quoted earlier, we have a very huge population here. Before the establishments of the new digital banks framework, okay, some banks already jump ahead to actually operate in digital with the likes of CIMB and ING as a foreign digital banks, okay. And with the launch of Discatech, okay, Discatech is one of the banks which actually shows a very aggressive growth whereby they managed to actually achieve 1 million downloads of the apps within just 38 days of the operations. That actually marks how strong is the market demand, especially when they launched the banks during the pandemic, okay. Now, if you look at all the banks on the top, like Discatech, they are backed by RCBC, Commonwealth Bank is backed by East West Bank, OF Bank is backed by Land Bank, and Eon Bank is backed by Union Bank. So we also see another trend whereby most of the banks, the new locally incorporated digital banks are basically backed by some more established banks, okay, in order to venture into a new underserved digital bank markets, okay. And let's look at Malaysia's context. Okay, when coming back to Malaysia, as we know, Malaysia is going to issue 5 licenses, and uniquely, we are going to see some new applicants who are actually operating in the Islamic banking, okay. And these are some of the key dates where we are accepting the application submission by June 2021, which is this year, and they are expected to actually start operation in 1 year from the submissions, okay. And we saw the applicants came from different sectors, and uniquely, we also saw some difference in Malaysia where some of the state governments also expressed their interest in actually pursuing with this digital bank license. And we also saw quite a number of cooperatives participated in some of the partnerships with all the consortiums, okay. And of course, there will still be an impact or influence from the foreign firms, especially the China firms like Tencent and also Alibaba, okay. Now, typically we see these are the winning features of a digital bank, such as you can see that they normally offers a high interest rates on deposits, or at least for the promotions like ZA Bank, they offer 6% during the launch for the first few months, okay. Spending in rewards for referrals and fast account opening, okay. And now the account opening is one of the essential features whereby you need to allow your customers to onboard easily and apply the loans almost instantly without frictions, okay. And not only loans application, it also savings account openings. So this has to be frictionless and with a faster turnaround time. And of course, some of the players will offer some other innovative offerings, okay. So the reasons for them to focus more on the onboarding is based on a study. These are the reasons why the consumer will willing to actually sign up with a new digital bank's license, digital bank's accounts, mainly because of the onboarding, okay. If you look at other reasons, it is not so strong, okay. The second one would be the pricing, touch point, customer experience, and quality of service. The most important piece is the ability to allow customers on board frictionless, okay. So that is the most important part that will actually ensure a successful acquisition of the customers into the platforms. We see the new players in the financial industry normally come from these three angles. They are either a locally incorporated startup or fintech, okay, which grows more organically. We also see an incumbent-led, which actually backed by existing bank with the tapping on their knowledge on the banking and also how they actually helps the bank to try out the new technologies. And we also see another part, which is a big tech-led. For the big tech, okay, firms like Tencent, Alibaba, they can bring in their technologies and their successful use case to different countries. Okay. The most important part is actually for today's banking is to establish a sustainable ecosystem through partnerships. That's why typically we see a lot of consortium being formed for the new applications on the digital bank license, where some of them provide capital, some of them will provide the technologies, some will provide the customer base and the distributions for the customer service, and some will bring in some value-add services. Now, how this will make it works is to create a continuous and internal demand and supply. Typically, operators like platforms, operators like Grab, Uber, or Shopee or Lazada e-commerce platforms, they came with a very good foundation, with very good ecosystem that they have a large base of consumer who are buying the services or goods. At the same time, they have their merchants who are selling the services or the goods. Okay. Now, when they evolve into a bank or they collaborate with a bank, what happens is that the banks can actually offer the savings and investment or financing or any financial products to the consumers of theirs to quickly build out the customer through the customer acquisitions, okay, at the lower cost with these partnerships. But not only this, to achieve financial inclusions, the banks have another big opportunity to do the financing to the merchants or the SMEs. By doing so, you are providing the startup capital, working capital to allow the new merchants to sign out to run their new business on these platforms, which indirectly you are actually growing the entire merchant base and also the platforms. At the same time, you are making the entire ecosystem sustainable. Okay, so that's why when it coming to the setting up a new digital bank, setting up a ecosystem is very important. And you should actually look into the agility, the technology enablement, and also the scalability to allow you to run at the lower cost. Okay, and the system supposed to provide you a highly flexible product engines to configure and deploy new product faster, and should be able to go to market and faster with a pre-integrated and API ready. And most importantly is to be able to acquire customer more efficiently. Okay, so with our helps, when we talk to the customers, we realize that there's a lot of opportunities that we can help them to automate processes, to bring the AI into smart decisionings and help them to unveil insights to make a better informed decisions, okay, throughout their entire banking operations. Okay. So if looking at Malaysia's context, typically Bank Negara is looking at these 5 criteria in order to actually measure the capability of applicants towards the operations. Okay, so it's looking at number 1 of robustness and in the risk management and compliance, and this is typically how we advise and help our customers. And on the strong they need a strong data analytics capabilities to be able to look into the product portfolios, customer engagements, and things like that. Demonstrate the best use of technologies, and have the financial strengths. And also, if you are in the Sharia banking, of course, you need a Sharia advisory as well as the system must be compliant to the Sharia requirements. Okay. So our take for digital banks applicants is that you need a local and reliable technology partner who can bring you the leading technology for the next generation of core banking. It can help you faster to the market and have the domestic know-how, and actually brings to you the lean operation to cut down your operational costs and make the things easier for operations. And last but not least is together either to helping you to build the ecosystem or at least help you to connect to the established ecosystem in the countries. Okay. And what about the existing banks? Okay, the impact to the existing bank is where you still have about a year to two leading advantage before the new banks actually hit the market. Okay, so probably this is your advantage, whereby you can move earlier into the underserved markets, or you can accelerate your digital transformation in the space of, for instance, enabling a remote customer onboarding, improving your digital customer experience, reducing your operating expenses through automation with the AI-driven banking, and build up the ecosystem of connects to the ecosystems. I think the digital banking evolution is happening now in Southeast Asia. So let's be ready to embrace the wave of banking digitalizations. Okay, that mark my last slides here, and I'll hand over back the screens to Elvi.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ige, for such insightful information. In a nutshell, banks have to move forward with the right partnership, with the right market, because right now in Southeast Asia, we have seen a huge gap of digital banking compared to the other rest of the world. So in order to set up a digital banking, one of the components to attract customers is by customer onboarding. So I will pass the floor to Azlin to share her experience in eKYC.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, Elvi. Thank you, Mr. Ike, for such an insightful sharing. So allow me to share my screen. I hope you can see my screen. Okay, so today we're going to talk about unlocking Malaysia's digital banking revolution with eKYC. Allow me to introduce. My name is Azlin, a business development side from Innovative Solutions. Okay, before we go to the mass eKYC, allow me to introduce a little bit about Innovative Solutions. So Innovative Solutions started in 2011. Our HQ is at Malaysia, Subang Jaya, and also we have business entities at Singapore and as well as Indonesia. So most of our customers are from Southeast Asia. So we are much focusing on the Southeast Asian countries. And it's how we serve our customer there is either we go to them directly, we work with the local partners at that particular region. Digitizing business processes is actually the umbrella word for our products. Other than eKYC, we also do have Joget workflow, basically a low-code workflow, and also biometric authentication. So a mass eKYC is a digital ID verification technology to support eKYC process and identity fraud management and regulated industries. So this KYC processes actually were introduced about 20 years ago, and during that time, people still call it as KYC without an E. So it was done manually and primarily aimed at financial institutions. So since that, it has become increasingly common for a wide range of businesses. So most of the companies use at least some of the aspects of the KYC procedures, from dating sites, online rental, insurance, and credit card companies. So eKYC is a set of verification that banks are required to carry out on customers for the purposes of preventing financial crime, identity forgery that is done digitally. And with the implementation of eKYC, nowadays, it enables the digital onboarding of customer to occur anytime and anywhere, regardless your 9 to 5 time. So, and also, of course, for the benefit of the customer, your customer, they are no longer needed to go to the physical branch, go to your premises just to open their account. So what your customer need to do is that just take their phone, download the app. It can be any app. Take their IC, like my card, passport, snap the IC, do the selfie, and then submit it. Then your eKYC is done. So, okay, last year in June, 30 June 2020, Bank Negara Malaysia issued its policy document on electronic know your customer, which follow their draft. so which followed the draft in December 2019. So this policy documents aims to accelerate and streamline practices of industry players in their adoption of eKYC technology, and they're very focusing on the online processes of identifying and verifying individual customers. So these are the current issues that happen actually. First is identity forgery. So what happened in identity forgery is that they use the stolen personal information such as full names, birth date, social security numbers, and commit crimes. Then the financial crime in money laundering is something that happens quite some time. And like financial crime, it has increasingly become a concern to the governments throughout the world. And also for money laundering, is concealing or disguising the identity of illegally obtained proceeds, so that they appear to have the originated from legitimate sources. So flawed customer identification, there is a studies. So usually banks take about 24 days to do the customer onboarding. So they require, so you can see that 24 days is quite some time, is quite a long time. So they require a solution which is fast and easy to adapt. So this is the must eKYC supports BNMB requirements, wherein, if I'm not mistaken, clause 7.5, they stated that they have something like something the customer possess, something the customer is, something the customer knows. So something the customer possess is what you have. Example like your MyCard, your MyTentra, your MyCast, right? So innovative solutions support all official valid identity documents recognized in Malaysia. And something the customer is who you claim you are. So what we do is that we do facial biometric verification between subject and ID photo. So that component called as OK Face is a one-to-one comparison. And also we do OK Live. It is a liveliness detection. So instead of just saying that your face is matched with your IC, so we also do check the liveliness. Something the customer know is like your PIN number, your password. So what we can do is that we do real-time verification through PANETS FPX and banking network IBFT. False acceptance risk is also spelled out in the BNM requirements, where the FR should target the PAR should be not more than 5%. So we already respond to the BNM exposure draft. Our must eKYC FAR is not more than 5%. And we also do have a must eKYC backend portal features, a reporting capability to generate FR report. So inside there, a must eKYC backend portal, you can export the report into Excel or PDF, and you can submit it to Bank Negara. And also, they also say that verify customer against government issued ID by utilizing biometric technology. Yeah, innovative supports all official valid identity document recognized in Malaysia. Government issued ID is authentic by utilizing appropriate fraud detection mechanism. So we want to make sure that the issued ID, like your MyCard, is not a fraud. It's a genuine MyCard. So our component called as OKDoc. It is a must eKYC patent pending document authentication. We use deep learning technique, AI technologies. It verifies MyCard. It verifies MyCard authenticity using a combination of image processing and deep learning technique. So inside there, actually, we do for Malaysia MyCard, we do quite numbers of checkpoint, like your landmark, your security features, and also your maybe if got sign of tampered. Utilize artificial intelligence, machine learning, or other forms of predictive algorithms. So a must eKYC is utilizing a set of AI techniques comprised of image processing, object detection method, and deep learning algorithm, ensuring the customer is a live subject and not an impersonator. So maybe we understand that nowadays the easiest way people to take your picture is just go to your social media account, your Facebook, or maybe an Instagram. So we don't want this kind of fraud happen. They can take they can do the identity forgery and take your picture from the IC, from the Facebook or Instagram. They snap the picture. So we don't want this kind of fraud happen. So I believe with the implementation of Working Life, this kind of fraud is not easily happening. So this is eKYC. eKYC, what we experience at Singapore as well as Indonesia. So Monetary Authority of Singapore, they issued a consultation paper. So this is the proposed requirement. So the banks must include for the non-face-to-face, or better known as eKYC. In Singapore, they call that as non-face-to-face. We call that as eKYC. So mandatory for them to include either passport or PIN, or biometrics, or token-generated password, information only known between customer and bank, such as transactions information, and should not only rely to sole means of identification, such as like your NRIC number, residential address, and date of birth. Because this type of information, you see that NRIC number, residential address is something that easily available. Maybe some of the people, they provide it for many purposes sometimes without they realize it. Okay, so in Indonesia, they very rely on a check with government database called as Dukcapil, right? So instead of they really check on the genuineness of the ID, they do the OCR, extract all level information, do the facial, and then check with the government database. Their government database is very powerful. The Dukcapil is very powerful, where they can even do the facial verification. Banks use case, so we experience with TMRW by UOB. It is actually a short form for tomorrow. So the main aim is to simplify the account opening activity, right? Account opening related, right? So they started in Thailand, then followed by Tomorrow app at Indonesia. For branch banking and customer self-service, so this one, instead of they are trying to enhance the customer experience. So instead of they go to the branch, they take the customer take the numbers, then waiting their numbers to be called. So it is like in a launch like setting. The customer can be served at their convenience by the sales consultant. E-wallet issuers use case. We experience with Boost. It is an e-wallet in Malaysia, one of the top 3 e-wallet. In Brunei, we experience with BIBD from Brunei, Razorpay from Singapore, and also at Indonesia, PD and OVO. So just sharing our use case with Boost. The moment when you want to increase your e-wallet size, they call that as premium e-wallet, right? So they will require you to do the eKYC, start from the OCR part, facial part, OK Life part, the liveness section, and also the document verification. So this is recognitions that we received, accorded one of the 2 merits award at APICTA, Asia Pacific ICT Alliance Award in 2019 for B2B FinTech category among 16 participating economies. So this one, we went to Ha Long, Vietnam. It is a patent pending, a method to verify authenticity of Malaysian identification document. And we also certified with ISO 27001-2013 for Information Security Management System, ISMS. So here is our value proposition. So we are local support. We have representation throughout Southeast Asia. So instead of my PR, we also can check other types of ID like eKTP from Indonesia, NRIC from Singapore, Brunei ID, right? And also we are proven technology for Malaysia ID verification. And yeah, we are ready for Southeast Asian region. And this one is interesting. Each must eKYC component can be implemented separately to form different use case. So I understand that this eKYC, you say like it is like a journey, right? from snap the IC, do the facial, submit the document authentication, right? Then proceed with the next step. But actually, we are flexible and we follow our customer use case. For example, like if you don't mind, I can share here our telco. They do have two types of use case where they have the agent side, and also they have the self-service onboarding, meaning they activate their SIM card the customer activate the SIM card by themselves. So for agent side, they might not need all the components, maybe just the OCR or just the OK doc, just to enhance the customer experience. So we also support that kind of use case. And yeah, with the implementation of OK Live, we prevent it fake. Okay, this is the last slide from me. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, over to you, Alvi.
All right, thank you so much, Azim, for the insightful info about eKYC and the implementation across Southeast Asian. So for the I will pass the floor to Shenkai for the technical aspect of eKYC.
Hi. Okay, so for my side, I will just touch a bit on the technical aspects of the eKYC. So we have seen that Azlin has tell us a bit on eKYC, how it gets to be implemented into a digital banking solution. And as she mentioned as well, this is one of the first touch points to your digital banking platform, should you come up with one tomorrow, right? So the first thing they have to do is probably log in. Then after that, they will have to do an onboarding. And you want this onboarding to be secure. Yeah, to make sure you authenticate that this person is really who he say he is, and this person is actually meeting your requirements to be onboarded. Yeah. So this is just a few things that we're covering. One is the EMAS eKYC components that is covered, that covers the whole idea of eKYC, and then the technical aspects behind it, a little bit of how it works, and after that a bit on the host integration platform. So yeah, without further ado, let's look into the EMAS eKYC components. So I've laid it out here in terms of, let's say we were looking at the traditional onboarding process. So let's say you will have a bank, a digital bank, and you onboard someone traditionally. This is what the process would look like in general. So let's say you have the customer to come into your bank, and then you have to fill out a form, and then you have to request for the IDs to check and verify this person is who he is. Then you have to photocopy the person's ID for record purposes. And then after that, you have some background processing, right? To look at all the information and probably even do a background check. So let's say you check with the AML database or creditworthiness database to see whether this person is actually meeting your requirements, right? Then all in all, the last process is just to manually check, process everything, and then you finally onboard the customer if the person is meeting the requirement. So for each of these steps, actually, the EMAS eKYC has a component to match all this, right? So the first one, for the ID, filling out forms and biodata, this is something that we have what we call OKID, whereby we just capture the image of your IC and it automatically extracts all the information from the ID and you populate it into forms, right? We'll talk about all this in detail later, yeah? Then we have the next one, OK Face and OK Live. This is to simulate or emulate the whole idea of comparing the face between your IC and the person standing right in front of you, so to say. And it's also to verify this person is a live person, because in the digital sense, you're actually going to have to take a selfie and people can do a spoof attacks or whatnot. So this process is here to verify that this person is the right face and it's actually a live person, not a mask or whatnot. Yeah, we'll talk a bit more detail later. Then we have OKDoc, just to check, okay, this document is authentic. It's not a replica, it's not a fake. We get an automated background check called OKDB as well. And then finally, we have a scorecard processing. So these are the components that entails or encompasses the whole eKYC that Innovative provides, right? And if you put them all together, this is what your digital onboarding process could look like. You know, so from the left, you can see a customer onboarding channel from tablet or mobile phone. They can just log in, initiate the onboarding process or initiate the ID verification. Then you go through all this process. Then eventually it will be the so-called you've been successfully onboarded results or not will be sent back to the customer after all this has been done, right? And some of this information, just to let you know, some of these processes is actually happening behind the scenes. So it's not something customer can see and then eventually know, oh, there's a, I don't know, they can find a weak link or something like that, or maybe some things that is not supposed for them to find out. But yeah, so these are a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, right? So with that, just to touch a bit on the technical aspect. So what exactly is happening each and every behind each and every components, right? So OKID, so OKID is actually the feature that extracts the information from your MyCard or actually any other IDs. So it does this by OCR technology. It's called optical character recognition. So you will engine will be able to read the information out, extract it, and then you get to use this to populate into your form or to store it for your record purposes. So you'll cover things like name, ID number, addresses, what is the gender of this person, and so on. And you will actually also crop the face photo of the person on the ID. And this face photo will be then used in the face comparison step later on to ensure that this is actually the right person, right? And then, obviously, you get to store this information for your record and future reference. So this is the OKID part. So you've checked, or rather you've extracted the information out, you know a bit about this customer. The next thing you will want to do, or rather the customer, as they submit, they'll submit your ID and the selfie. The next thing you want to do from there is to make sure that this selfie that is submitted is actually of a live photo and is not a fake or spoof attack. So we've seen nowadays there are things where people have even deep fake softwares, or maybe they sometimes just have to pull out a screen, they pull out your Facebook profile picture, and take a photo and say that this is me, or maybe they print out a picture of you and then they take a photo and say this is me. So these are all the spoof attacks that we can hear of nowadays. But this is the feature that prevents this from happening. So how it works behind the scenes is that it's actually based on the AI technology. You can see here it's written there CNN, which is convolutional neural network. It's a type of AI deep learning method. So this basically, yes, AI has been evolving over the years to be a very robust system or technology per se, and it's something that we also have actively incorporate into our system. So this is one of them whereby we have implemented this, and we find this to be really helpful in actually preventing such a spoof attack. Even more so effective than some other type of liveness check feature. And what I mean by that is that if you try some other cases or some apps, I think they have this movement factor that you move, and as long as they see you moving, they will say, oh, this is a live person because it's moving according to my command. But what we have here is a silent-based live feature detection. So all you do is just take a selfie. It's not a video, just a picture selfie. And from there, it's able to tell whether you are actually a real person or not. And maybe behind the scenes, we can discuss a bit more on how exactly it works, but it actually works better than the one that requires a video and movement. Yeah? So this is one of our commitments to actually implement AI, robust AI technologies into our products. Next thing you will do is to compare the face. So this is the process. OK face is what they call, and it's false match rate of below 1 in a million. Yeah, and if you have used facial recognition before, you may also know that sometimes there's this term called facial recognition bias, whereby the model that they built, or rather the engine behind, is only been designed or programmed to actually mainly focus on certain ethnic population. So let's say if this face recognition system is developed by a Caucasian country, and they use Caucasians as their test subjects alone, then you'll find this thing being quite difficult to be used in other countries, say for Asians or for Africans who have different skin color and face structure. So this is something that we also take into account. Our face recognition system actually has proven to work in a multi-ethnical society, and even with so-called religious practices. So if a headscarf and with and without, you're still able to compare that. So this is a little bit of example of how the OK face works, or rather, what is the results of it? So you can see here with age of 20 to 30 in the first case, this is actually the two same person from the ID and the live selfie, and you can see that it's actually matched by our OK face. The second one as well is the same. There are two of the same person, the ID and the person. It's also matched. And the third one you can see here, this is a look-alike to the person in number 2 as well. So it's supposed to be it's a negative sample, a negative scenario if you like, and our OK face is able to say that no, this is not the right person, right? So it's actually successfully able to do that. And then lastly, we can see here a bit special case. You can see one is with a scarf and one is without a scarf. This is actually our colleague actually, and is still able to detect that yes, this is the same person. And even with that imperfection on the ID card, there's actually some peeling here, but it's still able to be detected as well. So this is how our OK face have grown over the years to be robust and able to detect the right face accurately. Yeah. And after that, one thing to not actually miss out is actually to check that whether the ID in the first place that was submitted in the earlier process was actually genuine, right? So they might be the correct ID, as in you extract all information. It's all it's all usable information in that sense. It makes sense, name, address. But is it a replica or not? This is what OKDoc is here to do. So understanding that there's a lot of IDs out there that we can support Singapore, Indonesia. But for the sake of this presentation, I'm limiting it a bit more to the Malaysian MyCard in particular. All right. So for OKDoc, as mentioned, is to check the authenticity. And there's actually 3 parts to it, that 3 main parts or categories that we check in that sense. So the first is the visual compliance. So what I mean by that is that when you look, basically as you look on to your MyCard, you get to, whether you get to see whether it's a photocopy, whether there's, or does it look like a screen that you're actually taking a photo from, and whether there's any landmarks present, the necessary landmarks present, not. So by visually, you get to check all this. This is something we do. And the second one is what we call a security feature detection. So many IDs nowadays have security features. So as you can see in the second image here, MyCard has a hologram that we get to detect and to tell that, okay, there's a hologram. So this is a very likely authentic ID. And for MyCard in particular as well, there is another security feature. It's a microprint detection, as you can see in the first image. And especially a very fine print of a background actually in our MyCard. And this is something that is quite advanced of Malaysian side. That's a good thing to hear. It's very hard to replicate actually. And we have this feature to actually detect so-called, this is what an authentic model looks like. And if you try to replicate it by printing it, even with the industrial printer, we tried before, you will not be able to get such proper microprint as you can see in the image, right? So we are able to detect that, and it's actually our patent pending algorithm that we have created. That is something that we are also quite proud of. Yeah, and so this is the second category, security feature detection. And last but not least is the content tampering detection. So this will address the whole idea of I have a real ID, but I'm trying to tamper my real ID. Right? So let's say if maybe I'm underage to sign up for a digital bank, but I want to force myself. So I change maybe the numbers from year 2000, my age of birth, to 1991. So yeah, these things are very common actually, especially in some of our customers. We hear such cases that they managed to prevent happening, either by marker pen or even just as a second image here, you can see they print out a very similar style and they place it on top of the original IC to sort of find a loophole. But this is something we're able to detect to say that there is a content substitution being happening here, and thus will be a reject. And it also has other features such as holographic photo comparison, the font size check, data consistency check. So whether, let's say, the front and back of the IC has the same number or not. Yeah, this is a type of detection that we also check. All right. So with all this in mind, you know the customer quite well already in that sense from the customer end on what they can provide you. What you probably might want to do next is to check with some third-party database to see if whether this person has a good credit score or whether they're involved in any money laundering or whatnot. This is where OKDB comes in. So it's actually a third-party data source that we work with. And first thing I'd like to bring to your attention is actually the background check here, right? So this is basically, yeah, we have to query to the database owners to say that this is the credit report of this person, and this is the AML report as well. And you get to see and evaluate from that point to say that, okay, whether this person is suitable to be onboarded or not. Right? And there's also another one called an ID existence check. This is a bit more specific for the Malaysian side, whereby we actually have a system to make query to government portals that is made public, whereby we can check such as driving license status and voter registration. And the purpose of this is actually to check whether this person actually exists in the first place, right? So, or maybe this person has deceased and removed from the database. You get to do an existence check here to have a second factor of authentication or verification of this person, all right? So all in all, you have everything you need to know now. All you have to do is to process this information. So Irma's eKYC also has this thing whereby we have a scorecard baseline in a sense to process all the results, all the information we have earlier, and to come up with the eventual pass or fail in that sense, right? But in this case, we don't use pass or fail for our site. We have what we call clear, cautious, and suspicious results. We'll explain a bit more about that later. So basically, it's just a tabulation of all the information you collect earlier, whether the face is live, whether the facial recognition matches, the landmarks, it's present, hologram, and so on. And then we'll line it all up and check to see if it meets the criteria. So for example, if the person passed everything above the threshold, then this person will be considered clear, good to go to your onboarding system, no other further intervention needed. But let's say you have a fraud or somewhat shady case. For example, we look here, we have a live face, matching face, certain landmarks are present, but the microprint and hologram is not present, and you detect a screen. This is where we would park them under suspicious. That means this is outright not acceptable to be onboarded, and we will decline this onboarding process, all right? But we also have a middle ground, which is cautious. So a bit of this middle ground is just that sometimes end users may maybe take the image of the IDs in a glare, and in such a way it's a glare that you cannot see the landmarks or the face properly or something like that. So whereby we will actually classify them as cautious because this is, you may not want to necessarily decline them, but you may want to have a bit of further check on them. So a little bit on this, how it depends on how your organization works. But for the caution side, what can be done is that you can actually request them for a second ID to validate. Maybe this time you ask for a driver license instead of my card or passport, or you actually get to do eyeballing as a second factor of authentication, right? And then eventually you get to decide again whether this person is to be onboarded or not. So all in all, this is technically the full process of how the eKYC process will work for Irma's eKYC. But as also mentioned earlier, we don't only do MyCard. We actually support a lot of, the whole of Southeast Asia's ID documents as well. Actually, there's even some out of Southeast Asia as well, right? So we can actually support this as well. And a last thing, just to highlight a little bit, we realize that our customers, although having all this in place, have some, there's a more need from them, especially with BNM now coming to say that for eKYC process, you must produce a false acceptance rates report, false rejection rate reports. So this is where our host integration platform comes into play for our customers. So you can see all the information, all the components here earlier. And all this will be tied into our host integration platform. So a little bit of snippet of how it looks like there. And this will basically provide the digital bank a way to actually view all the the transactions that has been submitted, and even monitor performance. What is the speed like, whether there's any slow speed or whatnot, and to very importantly also generate the reports that is required for B&M, right? So as we have this in, we find that this covers a lot of our customers' needs. And from this, we actually cover the A to Z, and we get to be that one-stop station per se for eKYC. So that's my sharing on the eKYC and a bit of the technicalities on what's it behind. And that will be all for my side. And I guess this time I'll pass back to LV for the Q&A session.
Okay, thank you, Shankai, for the insightful info on the technical sides of eKYC. So as you can see, there are few features built in for eKYC, mass eKYC. Okay, let's move forward to Q&A session. Okay, here's a question from Terry Tan. What does a low-code workflow means? So this one I will pass to Shankai.
Okay, so the low-code workflow. So this one I believe is brought up by Aslin, and basically is essentially a workflow software. So nowadays in digitization, we basically avoid things such as submitting paper claims and submitting MC letters physically. So we have all these in the workflow environment, all digitalized. And the low-code part of this the low-code part of this whole workflow software is actually basically to say that there is very little to none coding knowledge needed. So in other words, in a sense, a layman with a bit of fiddling around will be able to actually create the whole system without the knowledge of C++ and Python and whatnot. Yeah, so that's a bit of the overview on what a JOGAT low-code workflow is. Yeah, perhaps if you'd like to know more, we'd be happy to answer more as well, maybe via email or whatnot.
All right, thank you, Shankai. So we have a question from anonymous attendee. Okay, so this one is for EK. For INFOPRO, what is the percentage of fraud or identity theft for those you have launched your digital onboarding eKYC? There is a recent report that there is a rampant fraud or identity theft originated from UB's Eon. UB is also using a service provider for eKYC.
Okay, thank you, Alvi. So basically, I think this is referring to union banks in Philippines. Okay, so Philippines, as I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of banks have actually moving ahead to deploy in the digital space with the digital onboardings. Okay, now we are not able to share too much on our customers' statistics at this moment, but we actually agree to you that there is a challenge on these frauds and identity theft. Okay, identity theft. So what happened is actually the most important part has been explained by Shankai earlier is the use of the technologies like the OKID, OKFace, OKLive, and OKDB in the preventions of the fraud. Okay, now not only we are actually looking at to enable the eKYC on the mobile itself, so we are also have to actually integrate it back to your backend and now check for the blacklist, PEP, political exposures list. So we have to check all these things and make sure that the customer is clean before you onboard the customers. Okay, now as when it comes to this eKYC perspective, the technology is evolving, and this is not something that comes in and immediately solve your problem entirely. It's an ongoing process because the technologies from the attackers like spoof attacks from deepfake technologies is also evolving at the same time. While I think innovative also is actually improving their patterns in actually preventing the frauds. So this is an ongoing process for the actually monitoring, the measurement and monitoring of the frauds, okay, and acceptance of this eKYC approval in the banks. Okay, for instance, in Malaysia, you would need to actually report to central bank regularly on your progressing and your performance on the eKYC onboarding. So this is a process because with new technologies, so we will still need some time for it to become more matured and then to be able to convince, okay, more people on this the benefits of the technologies. Okay, so that's how we actually see how we can help the banks to actually enable their business on with the customer onboarding, at the same time managing their risks at the accepted levels. Okay. Yep. Thank you, Avi.
All right, thank you, Ike, for that answer. Okay, so we have a question from Anna Matubis. Hi, I saw that you have AML checking for KYC. Can the system check client name versus latest watch list like OFAC, SDN, UNSC, FATF? We have also internal watch lists. Can the system also check against that?
Okay, maybe I can answer this. So yeah, for Malaysia, we do have, okay, with the ML checking. So this one is actually in the OKDB. So it is OK database. So regardless of what database, so as long as database allow us to call, it is an API call, so it is possible to happen. And for, let's say, you also have the internal watch list, so it also can be done.
Maybe let me add on a little bit on that. Okay, because for in many situations whereby many of the existing banks already have their internal this AML KYC process in place or system in place. So if you already have those and you want to actually capitalize on your existing watch list or PEP list or whatsoever, and you can basically just integrate it to your entire systems. So probably like what I said earlier, eKYC as a starting point on the front end validation and all those things. Moving back to this back end on the KYC part, you have optionals to take the eKYC, this OKDB if you don't have the service for you. But if you have it, we can integrate it with you. The most important part is actually looking at the frictionless customer experience for them to actually opening an account or applying a loan. Okay, so we are looking at the end-to-end process altogether. Okay.
Okay, so I hope it answer your question. Okay, so this one for INFOPRO, can you do onboarding, eKYC, and approval process, or just the onboarding?
We do both actually. There are two contexts. Okay, one is actually onboarding to open a saving and current accounts. The other one is onboarding to apply a loans. Okay, it depends on what is your context. Okay, basically, the first part is actually the KYC part. Okay, as I mentioned, KYC is just regardless of whether they are opening a saving current account or applying a loan, you need to do a KYC. And today with the ERMAS eKYC in place, it helps us to remove the needs to do the face-to-face KYC process. So that helps you to automate that process. And at the back, like AML part, so it will still be integrated, and it will integrate it back to the core systems, allowing you to actually pass applications upon approval from all these checkpoints. It will pass it over to the core system to allows you to open an account on the fly and to pass it into your loans origination systems. And from the loan origination system, okay, you possibly can enable the instant approval also by using things like AI-based credit scoring. So there are end-to-end process available for all these things. Take for instance, if you are doing the loans onboarding, when you actually not only you are actually doing the facial recognitions and ID proofing and all those things, what you do is you also upload some supporting document, right? Such as your pay slips, your probably your bank statements. Okay. Now what happened is, okay, the technology will be able to actually take in your documents, okay, and extract the data, and then from the data, it will input it into the credit decision engines. So entire credit approval process, it can be fully automated. Of course, we won't say it's 100% fully automated for all the customers. For you probably will have some policy in place that we will set up. What we recommend is the strong positive, okay, risk-free, you will actually automate the approval process. Strong negative, you will reject automatically. But the one in the middle, you actually pass it to the human decisions. Okay, so this is the most optimal operation at this moment, which it balances between the automation as well as the risk management. Okay, it helps you to reduce your productivity overhead on the operations. At the same time, it helps you to mitigate the risk. Okay, so that will be the best optimal design for a new loan application process. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, EK, for the answer. Okay, so there's a question from Stephen Ritz. Are there any limitations in end user devices such as Oppo mobile phones?
Okay, maybe I can answer this from the eKYC side. So in short, no, there shouldn't be any limitations because our services is provided via APIs. An API meaning that it's just an integration point. And as long as you can program the app to point to this API on the user's API, then that will be fine. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So we have a question from Susanna Mortani. Does customer of INFOPRO have to invest also on AI and ML software, or in the system has already include both?
If you look at our solutions, if you're talking about end-to-end solution, we have in total 52 modules altogether. Okay, they are all pre-integrated and at the same time, they are all modular, just like what you saw just now, OKID, OKFace, OKLive. It is also modular in the way that you can pick and choose. So as and when, if you have such a needs, and then we will actually pre-integrate and deploy it together. So that is a case-by-case basis. Okay.
All right. So we have another question for INFOPRO. How accurate your ID existing check or background check in Philippines? Any feedback from existing bank customers?
Frankly speaking, in Philippines, we are still testing and trying out on the market in the way. Okay, as I say, some of the statistics we would not be able to share. We need to get the consensus from the customers first. But as I said earlier, they are probably, I think Philippine markets are quite aware of the presence of the eKYCs throughout the new digital banks which launched last year. Okay, so probably although different eKYC platforms using different patterns or different logics to do to achieve the same purpose, but actually they are actually all aiming at the same purpose of actually how to prevent the frauds. Okay, it's not just only allowing you to onboard the customers, but most importantly is how to prevent a identity fraud in this way. Okay, as I think earlier we explained already, where Shankai already explained a lot on how it works in a way, but actually when it goes down to very technical, maybe they have some academic support behind. So if you want to find out more, we can bring it offline to explain to you in more detail, like how the CNN is used to prevent the frauds and all these things. Okay.
All right. So since we have reached to 12:10, last question lah. Okay. From Ruby Samson, I understand that the ID supported by this app is only the standard ID. Please confirm, is this may support more IDs other than the standard universal ID? I think that one is Shankai can answer.
Sorry, could you repeat the question? Is it what type of IDs as well?
Yeah, that's why I'm thinking maybe it's supported by this app only the standard ID.
I think the question was, because just now Shankai showed the list of IDs supported by the system. So the question was whether do you support any other IDs beyond that list? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so that was a high level overview. Yes, we do support more than that. So let's say for, if I'm not mistaken, like an example, rather like the Malaysian My Card you see in the image earlier, we also support driving license, My Cars, My Control, and this is same for other countries. Not saying that we 100% support everything in Southeast Asia, but we support a lot of them. And even if it's something that is not so supported right now, you can bring it up to us, and we can actually, we have done this for a few customers actually, we can actually implement it as well. Yeah, so that is not an issue lah, actually.
Okay, I think Shankai, can you move forward to the next slide? Okay, so since we have we have exceeded the time limit for actually until 12. So this is the contact us page for INFOPRO. Maybe you can scan the code or get the email from the slide. And for innovative, you can also scan the QR code and get email. As for others, I saw a few Q&A saying that they want the slides. So worry not, we will send to you after maybe the end of the day. So we will give you guys time like until 12:15 for you guys to scan the QR code and then maybe drop your question there. And we would like to also thank you all for joining our webinar. We really hope that the webinar benefit you guys. Just a side note, we will also share this this video over YouTube. All right, so we have reached to 12:15. So I think that's the end of the webinar. Thank you all. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you, Alvi. Thank you,
Thank you,
Azlin.
Ike.
Thank you, Shankai.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your
Right.
time. Bye.
Bye-bye.